Hello guys, this is your friend Dark Verse. We are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto's training trip turned into an ultimate harem with Fu? Part 2. And if you enjoy this fanfic, then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. 3 weeks later, Naruto and Fu stood before their sensei in the clearing, ready for the next level of their training, their chakra control training finally completed. It had been annoying to both Naruto and Fu when they had tried to walk on the nearby lake and found themselves and all their clones struggling with it and unable to stand on the surface for more than a few minutes before falling in. Although Naruto's control was good enough that he didn't need to redo the tree climbing exercise, Fu did, much to her chagrin. On the third day, their control was good enough that they were able to stand on the surface with no trouble. Soon after, they began to hold leaves to their bodies with chakra. During the last days of the 3-week period, they and their clones would spar while they held a dozen of leaves to their bodies with no trouble. After the 3 weeks were over, their chakra control was better than it had ever been, despite the seals. Jiraiya also applied 4 limb-weighted seals to them both during the second week. Okay, Pervy Sage, now, what's the next level of our training? Naruto asked confidently. Okay, for the next step, you're going to use a dozen clones for a while. You're both going to be learning to control large amounts of your nature chakra. Naruto, Jiraiya pointed his thumb behind him to the waterfall. You're going to be using your chakra to split that waterfall in half with pure wind manipulation. Whoa, was all Naruto could say as he gazed up at the waterfall. As for you, Fu, I want you to gather as much lightning as you can into an attack and slam it into the valley wall. I want you to cause as much damage with pure lightning chakra as you can. You got it, Arrow-sensei. If you're ready, then get started. This is gonna take you a while, and after you're done with that, I've got a few scrolls for you with jutsu in your elements. Arrow-sensei, Fu said. Huh, think you could teach me that earth technique Naruto used when we sparred in Taki? That tunneling jutsu seemed useful. Sure, but for now, focus on your lightning manipulation. Fu nodded before she and Naruto got to work. Naruto could only barely part the water, and Fu's lightning attack barely caused a crack in the wall. Neither was surprised, having already learned another element. They had expected this. A little over 5 months later, Jiraiya finally released the seals and his apprentices were beaming at their accomplishment. After they had completed their nature chakra exercises in 2 weeks, they had returned to their usual training method. 100 clones divided into groups of 20. The shadow clones were either reading what Jiraiya told them, which Naruto still didn't like but had come to accept, chakra control, taijutsu katas, kenjutsu, which Fu had wanted to learn since she learned the water slicing blade, and Naruto had wanted to learn after seeing Fu and remembering Zabuza, and learning jutsu of their elements. After the first month, they had truly mastered the exercises. Naruto could cut the waterfall on pure chakra manipulation easily, and Fu could pull off something similar to Chidori, but more powerful, focused around her whole arm and not really fit for practical use. Still, she could now manipulate large amounts of the element easily, and that's what mattered. She also had apparently gotten a few ideas from it but had filed them away for later. Naruto learned a few wind and fire jutsu, and Fu had learned water and lightning jutsu, mostly C ranks and a few B ranks. Fu also learned the same 3 tunneling jutsu Naruto had, and they both learned a 4th. They were about even now in terms of their elemental jutsu. It was easier for Fu to learn her elements because she had both affinities while Naruto only had the affinity to wind, so fire jutsu were harder for him to learn. Were it not for the 5-pronged seal, it would have been much easier for them, but this had paid off. Once they had completed their training at the end of the 5 months, Jiraiya had removed the seals and they saw results of doing months of training with them. They had spent the rest of the day adjusting to the lack of the seals, and the results nearly took their breath away. Everything they had learned had become almost effortless when it came to manipulating their chakra. They had decided to try the clone jutsu, at Naruto's suggestion, and actually succeeded. Learning the jutsu was not that awe-inspiring. It was the lowest rank technique after all and virtually useless, but until now it had been impossible to pull off. They would always overload the jutsu with too much chakra no matter how little chakra they tried put into it. Now it was easy. There was about a month and a half until the first year of their training trip was over. Both Jinchuriki had grown quite a bit, though they dressed about the same. Naruto was now 5 feet 0 and Fu was 4 feet 9 and both looked slightly older. Right now, their taijutsu skills were high chunin to low jonin level, their kenjutsu was high chunin level, thanks to the 5-prong seal their chakra control was cage level and they had mastered their elemental exercises. But they had yet to even begin to learn sealing arts, which were much more difficult than anything else they had learned so far. Naruto wanted to learn them to follow in his parents' footsteps and Fu thought it would be useful for a Jinchuriki to know. They had also not yet begun to explore Genjutsu, which proved to be something of a challenge since it wasn't their teacher's strongest subject and of course, the better they got, the slower further progress came. Right now, the two Jinchuriki were standing before their sensei. Alright you two, for the rest of the month we're going to take a little break. Jiraiya said. What? Are you kidding, pervy sage? We were just about to start with the strongest jutsu and we haven't started on Genjutsu yet. Naruto yelled. He had been kind of excited as they were about to start learning A-rank techniques. Which is part of the reason we're going to town. Genjutsu's not exactly my specialty. I need to get some scrolls if you want to learn it. That aside, if you keep up like this, you'll burn out. You need to learn to take your time to relax. Jiraiya said and Naruto scoffed. Sounds to me like you're just making excuses to go do some research, pervy sage. Well of course, I've been stuck here with no young beauties, aside from Fu here for over 5 months. Flattery's not going to help you, Ero-sensei. Fu deadpanned. Well, anyway, I'm the teacher here and I say you two need some R&R. So we're headed to a nearby town and staying there for 2 weeks, like it or not. Huh, fine. Maybe this will change your mind. Naruto conceded before making a hand sign. Jutsu. With a poof of smoke, Naruto was replaced with a tall, gorgeous blonde girl. Jiraiya barely managed to resist a nosebleed when he sensed Fu's feminine fury, obviously enraged at how degrading this was to women. Oh brat. You have no idea how badly you just messed up. What's wrong? Don't like what you see? The blonde asked. Jiraiya responded by pointing at Fu with a smirk as Fu's fists were trembling and her eyes were shadowed by her hair. Naruto changed back and looked clueless at the cause of her anger. Hey, Fu, what's wrong? Naruto asked. He was answered with a punch to the face that sent him flying into the valley wall. By the end of the day, between Fu's anger and her explanation why that technique was insulting to women, Naruto had decided to never use that jutsu again, in the presence of a female at least. 2 days later, Naruto and Fu were wandering the town Jiraiya had spoken of. It was a lively place with many restaurants, bars, inns, casinos and brothels. They had some places for kids too, of course. The experience was good for Fu. This was the first time she stayed in a place where she wasn't treated like a demon in human form by its people for an extended period. Naruto, however, constantly felt as if he had forgotten something important. They were currently searching for something to do. They had spent some time at a bar. Their shinobi status allowed them to drink and they found they both had a very high tolerance to alcohol, most likely due to their status as Jinchuriki. They each still had 500 ryo of what their sensei had left them. Wait a minute. Crap. Naruto suddenly shouted in a state of panic before he created a few dozen shadow clones and scattered, much to the surprise of Fu, who quickly took off after the real one. Wait, Naruto. What the hell's wrong with you? Fu yelled as she chased after the blonde. We need to find the pervy sage, fast. I just remembered something important. What is it? Tell me what's going on. The last time we were in a town like this, pervy sage used my money instead of his and left me broke, and he has our wallets. What? How could you forget about something like that? Fu shouted, panicking as well now. Neither of them had a lot of money, it was all in their wallets. If that old pervert had spent it. It was a year ago, get off my back. Naruto yelled back. Found him, he added as one of his clones had found him and dispelled. They ran to a bar and found Jiraiya where you would expect him, on a couch surrounded by women laughing, his face red from alcohol. Both their wallets were on the table, about half empty when they had been full last time they saw them. Both walked forward and picked up their wallets with twitching eyes. Hey kids, having fun? Jiraiya said as if nothing was wrong here. Why would you do this? I've seen your checkbook, Fu said, eyes still twitching as she looked at her wallet. Well, what can I say? Jiraiya said looking sheepish. Nothing. Naruto answered as he and Fu both created a dozen shadow clones and Fu and her clones immediately created water swords. They were both sharing the same thought. The old pervert had to pay for using their money, especially when he was rich. Hey, hang on a minute. Jiraiya said holding his hands in front of him defensively as the girls wisely chose to run. The pair and their clones attacked without another word. Jiraiya didn't fight back, but he didn't let them hit him either, until a Naruto clone got behind him as he ducked under a slash from a water sword. Konohagakure's most secret and sacred technique. 1,000 years of death. The Naruto clone called out. Jiraiya panicked, recognizing the technique, but it was too late and seconds later he was launched into a wall by the assault. Naruto smirked as their clones dispelled while Fu looked on in complete shock for a moment before she doubled over in laughter as Naruto made a V sign with a toothy grin in victory and Jiraiya lay on the floor in pain and mortification. And so Jiraiya learned to never spend his pupils' money without their consent again. It was around 4 p.m. on the first day of the second week. Naruto and Fu had made a mistake and spent most of their money. Having only 300 ryo left between them, they walked around aimlessly, trying to find something to do. They considered training for the rest of the day, despite Jiraiya's wishes. As they wandered, they walked by a gambling parlor. There were several young to middle-aged men inside playing dice. Hey, want to play Chohan? We might be able to make some more money. At worst, we'll have some fun. Fu said. One of these places? Sure. I guess, Naruto replied. They walked in and all the gamblers turned to them. Hey kids, want in? One of the gamblers asked. Got any money? A little, this enough? Naruto asked showing what they had left. Sure kid, we'll take whatever money you got. He said with a smirk. An hour later and Fu's eye was twitching, she had made 300 ryo. Naruto on the other hand was laughing with a grin on his face. He had taken everything from the people he was playing against but the cloths off their backs. You've got to be kidding, Fu said below her breath as she looked at Naruto and his winnings. Damn it, who's the idiot who let these two in here? One of the gamblers asked, the others grumbling similar thoughts. Hey, Naruto, ever been to a casino? Fu asked, getting an idea. Huh, oh yeah once, when we were looking for Grandma Tsunade, it was after Pervy Sage spent all my money, but I won it all back with 1 coin. You won enough to fill that wallet of yours, with 1 coin? Fu asked. Yeah, Naruto suddenly stopped talking before he and Fu smiled evilly. Hey guys, where's the nearest casino? Fu asked with a sweet smile. Everyone there thought the same thing. Poor bastards, they'll never know what hit em. Late that night, Jiraiya returned to their hotel room, sober but reeking of alcohol, to find Naruto and Fu with identical smiles on their faces. Huh, looks like you two had fun today. Anything exciting happen? Don't tell me I missed out on a research opportunity from you. Jiraiya said with a grin as he saw their smiles. They both turned to him, grinning at some shared secret while Naruto held back laughter. Alright, what's got you so happy? He asked before Naruto pulled out a sealing scroll and promptly opened it, and in a poof of smoke, about 30 million Ryo in cases appeared. Wah, what the hell happened? What did you do? One explanation later. You made all this at a casino? Jiraiya asked in disbelief. So this is where Tsunade's luck went. Back in Konoha, Tsunade was sitting at a small round table with Anko and a fair amount of money between them, both holding cards when she sneezed. Someone must be talking about me, she noted. Probably the old pervert, Anko stated with a smirk. Lady Tsunade, Shizune yelled as she ran into the room. You shouldn't be doing this, I thought you'd stop when you became Hokage. Oh, lighten up Shizune, I'm only playing for small change. Yeah, but that's enough for Dango, so hurry up and let me take your money. Anko said, still smirking. Aren't you? This should wipe that smirk off your face. Tsunade said as she showed her hand, 4 tens and a queen. She reached for the money but is stopped by Anko. Not so fast Lady Hokage, straight flush. Anko said with a slight mocking tone as she showed her hand, an ace to a 5. Shizune sighed and face-palmed and Tsunade twitched. Shizune wished her master would learn to stop gambling. She really didn't understand it. Winning can be a thrill, but Tsunade almost never did, and when she did win it was usually a bad omen. Speaking of her, I'd better be far away when she hears about this, but I should send a shadow clone, she's bound to vent on the brat, should be quite the show. Jiraiya thought to himself. Wait, what did you mean just now? Fu asked. Huh, oh about Tsunade. Ever hear of the legendary sucker? Jiraiya asked with a smirk. His teammates' misfortune always amused him. Fu was speechless upon finding out the legendary Kunoichi and Medic Nin and the legendary sucker, the woman who would gamble all her money away knowing she always lost, were the same person before she noticed something and thought of all the S-class ninja she knew of. Do all really powerful ninja have quirks and eccentricities like this? Fu asked, a bit afraid since she hoped to be an S-class ninja one day. Jiraiya cupped his chin in thought. Come to think of it, pretty much. Not all but most. Maybe it has something to do with the crazy training you need to reach this level, or maybe most people, with a few exceptions like the 4th Hokage, need to be a little crazy to reach their full potential, but typically, the stronger you are, the greater the chance for some quirk or form of mental instability, Jiraiya replied, much to the pair's horror. Were it not for the fact they had the Akatsuki after them, Naruto and Fu may have started reconsidering their life goals after hearing this. But enough of such thoughts, I for one, am going to bed. Oh right, first, what do you plan to do with that money? Huh, well, I hadn't really though of it, I guess I'll get a house, some ramen, Naruto trailed off. And you, Fu? Jiraiya said. Fu shrugged in response. Well, I've got an idea. What are you planning, pervy sage? Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes. Oh don't worry, you both want to be swordsmen right? They nodded, not sure what that has to do with it. Well, after we're done relaxing here, I think we'll head to Takumi village. Really? Alright, I bet they'll make us something awesome. Naruto exclaimed excitedly. His readings had told him of Takumi village, the village of artisans. They made the highest quality ninja tools and weapons in all the nations, they were even capable of creating weapons of the same grade as the blades of the 7 swordsmen of the mist. Fu seemed excited too. Yeah, if we can convince them to make weapons for you. Anyway, that's after our downtime, now let's get some sleep. A week later, they had had their fun and were just about ready to begin their training again, but as Jiraiya said, they would take a side trip to Takumi village. Naruto had gone to another casino and took for a small fortune, before he and by association, Fu and Jiraiya were banned. Making a total of 70 million Ryo which they opened an account for. Currently, they had just set foot in Takumi village. Takumi village was a small village that lay deep in a bamboo forest. They walked through the village and were looked at oddly by the people, not nearly as bad as the looks the two Jinchuriki used to get in their old villages, but it was still affecting them, reminding them of times they wished they could forget. Aro-sensei, why are they looking at us like this? Fu asked. Probably because the ninja villages have been nothing but trouble for them. Jiraiya replied. Huh. Naruto responded. The people of Takumi are freelance weaponsmiths, they don't have any real alliance with anyone and few ninja. They sell their tools to anyone who can pay. What's wrong with that? Sounds like a good deal to me. Naruto asked. It is, in times of peace. Jiraiya replied seriously. Before Naruto could ask what he meant, the old man stopped. They stood before a unique smithy, far more elaborate than its competitors. Alright, here we are. This is the smithy of Seimei, named after the man who founded this village, and the best weaponsmith alive. Jiraiya said. Why do I get the feeling there's a catch? Fu asked. Good instincts, if he doesn't like you, he won't make you a weapon. Jiraiya said as he knocked on the door. Come in, a gruff voice said. Jiraiya opened the door and they stepped inside what seemed like a cross between a craftsman's workshop, smithy and laboratory. Inside was a tall, lean old man in his late 60s. He had a triangular beard, shaggy gray hair and onyx eyes. He wore a gray shirt with matching pants, wooden geta sandals and a dark purple long coat. I guess you're here for a weapon. You got it, but not for me. Jiraiya said as he stepped aside and indicated his pupils. Huh, are you kidding? These brats, you think they're worthy of wielding a blade of this village, let alone one of mine? Don't make me laugh. Naruto growled and Fu narrowed her eyes. Don't underestimate us, old man. Naruto started before taking a step forward, which seemed to amuse the old man. Hey now, don't tell me you're going to attack me. Our village doesn't train ninja brat, we only learn to manipulate chakra for our craft. Beating on an old man with little skill as a ninja isn't exactly going to prove your worth. Seimei said, although said this in a mocking tone, as if he believed he would win in a fight between them. Speaking of being an old man, I can't do all the work around here at my age and my apprentice left on a delivery. If you help out around here till he gets back in a few days, I'll consider it. Naruto was about to object when Jiraiya answered for him. Fine, they're all yours. What? Pervy sage, are you serious? Naruto asked indignantly. Look, if you want the best weapon, he's your guy, besides, think of it as strength training, no doubt he'll have you do some heavy lifting and I'll reapply your weight seals. Jiraiya replied with a smirk and a tone that said that though he was amused, this was final. Naruto grumbled. Aro-sensei, what are you going to do while we're working on this? Fu asked with narrowed eyes, sure he was just going to visit hot springs or use his transparency jutsu. Oh, don't you worry about me, there's plenty I can do in my spare time. Have fun now, you two. Jiraiya said as he walked off. 20 minutes later, they stood outside the shop were ready to begin. All right, brats. The old man said as he walked to a large open container, almost empty aside from a few pieces of charcoal. Your first job is to cut bamboo from the forest and use it to make charcoal and fill this back up. Can't work the forge if I don't have any fuel. 3 days later and the pair were questioning whether or not this was worth it. Seimei had them restock supplies, make repairs, basically a series of D-rank missions. As if that weren't bad enough, the guy treated them like dirt. Finally, Naruto had had enough. That's it. I'm not doing this crap anymore, I'll get a weapon somewhere else. Naruto shouted as he threw down a load of bricks he was carrying and crossed his arms. Not from this village, you won't, I'm the closest to a leader this place has. I say the word and no one here would make a blade for you or your friend. Seimei said, shocking Naruto and Fu. What the hell's your problem, old man? You and everyone else here been acting like we brought the plague or something. Naruto yelled. Because your villages bring us nothing but war and death. Seimei yelled, shocking the pair. What do you mean? Fu asked, curious of what Seimei meant. In times of peace, everything's fine. We sell our weapons, some of the finest in all the continent, to everyone. You ninja take those tools for granted, you show us no respect for our work, offer us no aid. When war comes, we are targeted so that the enemy doesn't use our weapons against them, even though we more than likely have made weapons for both sides. We have no true alliances, so we're left to fend for ourselves, and if we request aid from any village, we're reminded of our neutrality, regardless of what we've done for that village. Seimei explained, much to the pair's shock. Both take on sad, pensive expressions. Our village has come close to destruction many times, and when peace arrives again, you ask for us to make weapons for you, when you attacked us unprovoked or denied us the help we needed. If we did actually make an alliance, all that village's enemies would make it a priority to destroy us. Your ninja villages have brought us nothing but trouble, the old man said before he began to walk away. I'll help, Naruto said quietly. Huh, I'll help your village whenever you need it, after I become Hokage. Naruto said with determination. You want to be Hokage? Hey, as if a brat like you could ever hope to be a Kage. Don't underestimate me, I don't quit and don't run, I'll become Hokage and protect the village, and I'll help your village whenever you need it, Naruto declared. No one should have to watch as those precious to them die, and as Hokage, I'll do everything in my power to help you, for everything you've done for us, and I never go back on my work, because that's my ninja way. Fu, whose face was slightly tinged red, and Seimei said nothing for a few moments. Fu's respect for the boy had risen a bit from hearing this. After a moment, Seimei scoffed. Huh, whatever you say, kid, the master weaponsmith said as he walked away. Finish with that, you're done for the day. He turned around a corner to find Jiraiya leaning against it. Jiraiya stopped him as he walked by. Interesting kid, huh? Jiraiya said. Tch, why'd you bring such a loudmouth brat with you, like he'll actually follow through with any of that? Don't sell the kid short. Being Hokage is his life's dream. He lived a harsh life, he was an orphan shunned by everyone for something he had no control over. But no matter what happened, he never gave up. Kid's loyal to a fault and he always keeps his word, he'll follow through, provided his hot-headedness doesn't get him killed, that is. Seimei doesn't respond, and a moment later, he walked away. The next day, they were called to Seimei's workshop. A young man wearing something similar to Seimei had joined them. He had brown eyes and hair. Ah, you must be the ones who helped my master when I was away, you have my thanks. The young man said sincerely, loyal to his teacher and aware of his advanced age. You're welcome, Fu said respectfully. Hey, yeah, now let's get out of here, Naruto said as he turned to the door. I thought you came here for weapons, kid, the old man said, surprising the two teens and his apprentice. Huh, Naruto intelligently responded. I've decided to forge weapons for you too, so tell me what you want already. Seimei said. After a brief moments of celebration from Naruto, after which Seimei threatened to change his mind. They told him they wanted swords. Master Seimei hasn't specially forged a weapon for anyone in years, that these two were able to convince him, the apprentice thought. Alright, Seimei said as he brought out two unique pieces of black metal. Here, focus your chakra in these. Naruto and Fu did as told. Good, now there's just the matter of payment, 10 million. What? Fu exclaimed while Naruto yelled, are you serious? No way these things are. Naruto, Fu, stop complaining. Brat, remind me how much you won at the casinos. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Jiraiya said. It better be. Naruto grumbled as he got out his checkbook. Yeah, or I'll do that. 1,000 years of death, thing, with my water sword. Fu added, even if it wasn't her money, she didn't want Naruto to waste this kind of money on her. Jiraiya paled slightly, knowing she'd do it and Naruto would help her. If he knew it was coming it wouldn't be too hard to avoid, but he had to sleep sometime. Seimei grinned as he was given the check. Wonderful, your swords will be ready in a month. For the rest on the month, they returned to the valley and trained. They learned some new jutsu and their kenjutsu skill improved. Jiraiya had also began to teach them genjutsu as he had bought some scrolls while they were with Seimei from the nearby Tanagakure, which they found surprisingly easy, likely due to their unique chakra control training. They had just arrived back at Takumi. They made their way to Seimei's smithy and knocked on the door. They got permission and went in. Well, it's about time you got back. I finished 3 days ago. Seimei said as he walked deeper into the workshop to retrieve their weapons. I haven't forgotten my threat, Arrow-sensei. Fu said menacingly. Jiraiya put on a strong front but he was very afraid of her threat. Here ya go. The weapons maker said upon his return carrying 2 swords. Both were Jien, both about 28 inches long in brown scabbards. The first had black wrapping around the handle and a green circular gem in its gold guard. The second also had a gold guard and white wrapping with a green gem in the same location as the first. Whoa, Naruto said as he and Fu took their swords. Fu was speechless as she examined hers, the one with the black wrapping. Boy, your blade is called the Hisho Taichi, in English, soaring long sword. With it, you will be able to freely manipulate the wind. Once you master it, you'll be able to use most of your wind jutsu with just a swipe of the sword and chakra manipulation, as well as fire blades of wind, all with minimal chakra. It will also allow you to counter and negate, or even redirect wind attacks. Awesome, Naruto said in awe as he drew the sword and looked at its blue blade. And you, girl, your sword is called Okibi no Yaiba, sword of blazing fire. Basically the same, but it uses fire and it can also absorb fire-based attacks. That's great and all, but I don't have the fire element. I know that, that's why I had you focus your chakra into that metal. The swords can convert normal chakra into their element. Just channel normal chakra through it and it will produce fire as powerful as any ninjutsu. Also, you can channel other elements through the blade, like lightning for instance, for normal effect. Well, I gotta say, you live up to your reputation. Fu said as she drew her sword and looked at the black blade. Like I need you to tell me that. Seimei said as he walked away. Hey, I never got your names. Huh, oh sorry, I'm Naruto Uzumaki, the future Hokage. Naruto said. Fu, formerly of Taki. Fu said. Hey, I'll remember those names, try not to get yourselves killed out there. The old man said as he disappeared deeper into the smithy. He didn't know why, but he had a feeling that boy would live up to his dreams and that he would be hearing both their names again. Alright kids, seeing as those weapons are dangerous, let's head back to the valley. Once you get the hang of those swords, we'll get started on your tenant's chakra. Then I'll start teaching you sealing jutsu. Jiraiya said to his students. 2 months after they had received their swords, Naruto and Fu were sparring with Jiraiya. The pair had raised their skills with taijutsu and kenjutsu to low jonin level and trained with their swords abilities. They had also learned a few new jutsu with their elements as well as a few other techniques such as the Shuriken Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto had also begun to learn space-time jutsu to follow in his father's footsteps, but it was the same problem that they had with genjutsu. Jiraiya wasn't skilled in that branch of ninja arts aside from the summoning jutsu and he had made little headway in the art. Their skill with genjutsu had improved and they could now use it in an actual fight, though not to particularly great effect yet. Still, they knew even a weak genjutsu could turn a battle if used correctly and at the right time. Jiraiya blocked Fu's Okibi no Yaiba with his kunai, the two traded blows for a bit before Fu jumped back to avoid an upward slash and lunged forward, her sword suddenly consumed in fire as she slashed it through the air, unleashing a wave of fire. Jiraiya jumped over the fire and Fu only for Naruto to burst from the ground with an upward slash where he landed. The Toad Sage leaned back, barely avoiding the blade before jumping back and running though hand signs as Naruto charged towards him. Ninja art. Needle Jizo. Jiraiya yelled, his hair transformed into countless sharp needles and encasing him completely. Naruto stabbed at Jiraiya only for the blade to clash against the needle armor. Naruto jumped backwards into the air, recognizing this attack pattern. Ninja art. Hell needles. Countless needles fired from the armor at the blonde, who swiped his sword, creating a gust of wind that blew the needles away. He landed near Fu, who thrust her blade forward as he slashed his. Tempest wind. Searing blaze. Naruto and Fu yelled out, respectively. Naruto's slash created a powerful gust of wind while a stream of fire erupted from Fu's sword, creating a firestorm. Jiraiya cursed at this as he disappeared in the blaze. Naruto and Fu looked on, both knowing they didn't catch the pervert. The blaze cleared to reveal Jiraiya was nowhere in sight. Naruto and Fu skipped back as they detected something beneath them and Jiraiya jumped out of the ground. Earth style. Dark swamp. Jiraiya called out and the ground Naruto and Fu landed on turned to chakra-infused mud. The pair land in the mud and despite their struggles, sink into the ground. Jiraiya smirked as he watched the pair struggle. Hey, looks like it's still too soon for you to face me head-on. Jiraiya said, only for his smirk to fade when the two grinned before turning to smoke. Lashing wind. A whirling gust of wind carves a path in the ground towards the Toad Sage from the tree line behind him. Damn. Jiraiya jumped out of the way of the blast, right where the pair wanted him. Jiraiya landed and suddenly, a swarm of insects erupted from the ground and the Toad Sage yelled in shock as he is consumed by the swarm before a blade of wind cut into him and he to burst into smoke. Naruto and Fu looked where the sage once stood as they walked back into the clearing before smiling. Alright, you two, the real Jiraiya said as he approached the pair who turned to him. You win, but don't get just because you beat my shadow clone. Get some rest. Tomorrow, we'll start training you to draw on your Biju's chakra. Take the rest of the day off. That night, Naruto and Fu talked while they sat around a fire at their camp and Fu noticed Naruto had been quiet, thinking about something intensely. Naruto, what's wrong? Fu asked concerned. Huh, what do you mean? Nothing's wrong. Naruto replied with a fake smile, which didn't fool the green-haired girl for a moment. Naruto, I know a fake smile when I see one. She said and his smile faded. What's wrong? Does it have to do with the Kyuubi? Yeah, there's something I haven't told you. Naruto said before telling her as much as he knew about the deaths of his parents. Fu was shocked to hear Naruto was the son of the fourth Hokage and about the deal he made with the Kyuubi. This also intrigued the Nanabi. The Biju could hear and see everything their hosts could, although they could only converse when their host wished it, when asleep, when they felt intense negative emotion or when trying to channel their Biju's chakra. The Biju's feelings on each other, with a few exceptions, ranged from mild distaste to outright hatred, but they recognized each other's power. Though the Nanabi hated the Kyuubi, she also recognized he was much more powerful than her. That the Kyuubi would admit to needing help to kill a human was troubling. So tomorrow, we'll find out who's after us, and I'll find out who's responsible for what happened that night. I see. Hey, Naruto, Fu said, getting his attention, wanting to get his mind off that. I don't think I ever asked, but, what are your friends like? Huh, oh, well there's Shikamaru, he's the only one of us who made Chunin, he's lazy and he's always complaining about something and would like to watch clouds all day, but he's really smart. There's Kiba. He's louder than I am and acts like he's in charge, but he's really loyal and always has his dog with him. He's an Inuzuka, isn't he? Fu asked. That was one of the clans Jiraiya had made them read about. Yeah. Then there's Ino, she was always thinking about boys and dieting. A fangirl? Fu asked with a slight scowl. Yeah, but she was getting out of it when I left. She always speaks her mind, she's confident and has a kinder side. Then there's Choji, he's an Akamichi so he's fat, but don't call him that, actually. Never call any Akamichi that, he's always eating, but he's kind and friendly and knows a lot about food. He went on to briefly describe Iruka, Neji, Lee, Shino, who he didn't know much about but had Fu's interest due to his insects, and Tenten, who he also didn't know much about but felt was worth mentioning. There's Hinata, she's kind and determined, but she's really quiet and she always turns away when I look at her. What do you mean? Fu asked, her eyes narrowing slightly. Well, whenever I look at her, she turns away and blushes. Naruto explained and a look of realization crossed Fu's face. What? Nothing. Fu replied, feeling slightly jealous of the girl. Anyway, then there's Sakura, Naruto said, looking to the ground. She's your teammate, right? The one you like? Fu asked and he nodded. What's wrong? It's just, she likes someone else. You're sure? Fu asked and Naruto began to explain the relationship between them, which led to her asking about Sasuke. To say she was shocked by what she heard would be an understatement. Fu knew of the Uchiha massacre and of the survivors, but didn't know the two were brothers and she was horrified by what Sasuke did to Naruto at the Valley of the End. Naruto, why do you want to save him if he rammed 2 lightning blades through your chest? I understand wanting to save your friend, but it sounds like he wants nothing to do with you or the village. Is it because you made a promise to Sakura? That's part of it, but what kind of Hokage would I be if I couldn't save one friend? Naruto asked and Fu's eyes widened slightly. I knew, since I first met him, that he was full of hatred. He glared at me, with the same look I got everywhere, but he wasn't looking at me. He looked at everything like that. But after we became a team, he changed. He started to open up to me and Sakura and risked his life to protect us. He even once took an hit for me we both thought would kill us. He and my team became like family, he was like a brother to me. But then, Itachi did something to his mind, that and Orochimaru's cursed seal, changed him. I don't care how hard it'll be, I won't abandon my friend. Not only that but, he said and Fu listened intently. I know that if I had ever given in to the glares, the hatred, I could easily have ended up like him. Naruto finished and a melancholy mood fell over both of them, each knowing they could have easily had their lives ruled by hatred too. I understand wanting to save him from living in hatred and loneliness like we used to, but he's not like us. We lived like that because everyone shunned us. He abandoned those who cared about him and chose to live like that willingly. Fu said sadly. Yeah, but still I can't abandon him. Naruto stated. Naruto, what would you do if he became a threat to Konoha? Fu asked and Naruto's head shot up to look at her. I know what you're going to say, but just consider it. If he became a threat to Konoha, what would you do? You asked me what kind of Hokage would you be if you couldn't save one friend, but look at what happened when Jiraiya and the third Hokage let Orochimaru go. A friend in danger from enemies is one thing, but what kind of Hokage would you be if you failed to protect the lives of your people and comrades trying to save one friend who lost his way or because you were unwilling to stop him when you could have? Naruto looked pensive as he stared into the fire, thinking of what Fu had said. He remembered what Jiraiya had told him. Had he wanted to, Jiraiya could have killed Orochimaru after he left the village, just like he could have killed Sasuke had he not redirected his attack to scratch his forehead protector during their final clash at the Valley of the End. Because the third couldn't kill his ex-student and Jiraiya couldn't kill his former friend, Orochimaru had been free to commit all the crimes and atrocities he has since. Fu gave him a few moments to think about this before she spoke up again. You know, It will probably never be the same even if you do bring him back. I know, Naruto replied, and they were silent for a few moments. He had thought about that a lot recently, and even if Tsunade and Konoha forgave Sasuke for leaving and didn't execute him or lock him up, what would keep him from leaving again? Why do you keep chasing after Sakura, if you know she loves Sasuke? Pervy Sage asked me the same thing. Well, maybe you should move on. Besides, it sounds like she thinks of you like a sibling to me. Maybe. Anyway, it's getting late, we should turn in. Fu said, getting up. She was a little disappointed with how that conversation turned out. She was trying to get his mind off unpleasant things and cheer him up, but it didn't turn out that well. If anything, he had more on his mind now. Still, she knew she had made good points. You go ahead, I'll stay up a while longer. Naruto said. As he thought about it, he realized the girl was right. He had actually thought of this a few times before over the past year. It was somewhat hypocritical to think about how the third and Jiraiya could have stopped Orochimaru when he let Sasuke go for the same reasons. By the time he went to bed, he decided he would do everything he could to bring Sasuke back, because right now his only target was his brother, but if he ever went too far or if he ever turned his hatred on Konoha, he would do everything in his power to make him see reason, but if it came down to it, he would have to do what was best for the village, even if it meant breaking his promise to Sakura. He had also long since realized that he and Sakura would likely never be together. Maybe Fu and the pervy sage are right, I still want Sakura to be happy, but I shouldn't give my heart to someone who doesn't feel the same. He was glad Fu was with him. Over the last year, the two had become close friends and she gave him good advice. She rarely tried to tell him what to do and instead usually told him facts, asked questions and let him reach his own conclusions, and she usually knew just what to say. He didn't think anyone understood him better than she did. He stayed up a little longer, thinking about his bonds with Sasuke, Sakura and Fu, as well as what he would learn the next day before he got up, put out the fire and went to bed. Naruto and Fu stood before Jiraiya. It was midday in the clearing and the skies were cloudy. Today they would begin training to use the power of their Biju. Alright kids, we're going to start training with your Biju's powers. Well, actually I'll help Fu since the Kyuubi has apparently decided to help Naruto. Jiraiya said. All he would do involving Naruto's training was watch his progress to make sure the Biju wasn't deceiving them and suppress the Kyuubi's chakra if he lost control. Speaking of which, before you start training, Naruto, I want you to talk to the Kyuubi about what happened the night of his attack. Though I'm sure you already plan to. He may be willing to tell you now. I need to know if my hunch was right. Jiraiya said seriously. Alright, who do you think it is, pervy sage? Naruto replied. Madara Uchiha. Jiraiya said grimly, shocking his students. They had read about him in one of the history books Jiraiya had them read, or forced to read in Naruto's case. Madara, but he's one of the founders of Konoha, right? The one who betrayed the village. How could he still be alive? Fu asked. I don't know, but he's the only one I can think of who would have the ability and motive to pull off an attack like that, and that the Kyuubi would hate so much but be unable to kill. Alright pervy sage, Naruto said before getting in a meditative position and entering his mindscape. When he opened his eyes, once again he stood before the cage of the Kyuubi. I was wondering when you would show up, boy, the Kyuubi said as he looked down on his container. It's been over a year since we made the bargain, though I must admit, you've spent your time well. He had to admit that the boy's progression, as well as that of the Nanabe's host, had been impressive, for a human anyway. Yeah, before we get started. I heard your conversation, brat. The sage is correct. The one who broke your mother's seal, who I need you to kill, is indeed Madara Uchiha. Kyuubi said, causing Naruto's eyes to widen. But, how is he still alive? There are ways to extend one's life, you should already know that from the snake. Naruto's eyes narrowed, knowing who he is referring to. As for how, I do not know. I too believed he had died fighting your first Hokage until he appeared before me that night. Before I train you, you should tell your friends of this. Like me, the Nanabe is rational, unlike some of our brethren. She will likely agree to help the girl if that man desires us. As much as I hate to admit it, none of us can face that bastard with any hope of success. Before I go, tell me exactly what happened the night I was born. The Kyuubi seemed to debate this for a moment. Very well. Kyuubi then explained the events of that night as he saw them. How when Naruto was born he was trying to break out of the seal, and that just as the fourth Hokage was going to repair Kushina's seal, Madara, though the Kyuubi didn't know who it was at the time, appeared. How he killed the midwives and guards and held Naruto hostage, and how Minato was forced to teleport away to save them when he found explosive tags attached to his blanket. How while he was away Madara had placed Kushina in a seal formation, and soon afterward, the Kyuubi fell under his control, and after that it was a blur to the fox demon. The next thing he knew, he was attacking Konoha, and, since they were attacking him, he continued his rampage until the fourth Hokage teleported them both to his safe house, and Kushina held him down to be sealed, and after one last attempt to free himself he was sealed by the fourth. Naruto was proud of his father and amazed by his mother. His admiration for them soared when he heard his mother was able to hold down something as powerful as the Kyuubi in the condition she was in, and that their last act saved his life. On the other hand, his hatred for the ancient Uchiha reached an all-new high. That he used him as a hostage, when he was a newborn, showed that the man was pure evil. Why did you continue to attack Konoha when you were released from Madara's control? Kyuubi smirked. To put it simply, it was fun. Naruto scowled. That aside, I was being attacked. I retaliated. The Kyuubi explained, and Naruto looked slightly surprised. So, if they weren't attacking, you would have left? Naruto asked incredulously. It was hard to believe that the Kyuubi, who he had been told was and had so far proven himself to be a mass of hate and destruction, would just leave. Perhaps. It was amusing, and I have destroyed and killed simply because I've felt like it, and I feel no remorse or pity, but I have better things to do with my time than wipe out a pathetic village. Kyuubi responded. Now go, return when you are ready to train. When Naruto opened his eyes to find Fu and Jiraiya looking at him. Both wished to know if Jiraiya's assumption was right. If it was, they may have to up their training. Good to see you're back, so. Jiraiya said. You were right, pervy sage. Naruto replied, looking at the ground with narrowed eyes. Fu's eyes widened and Jiraiya's narrowed. It was Madara. Naruto then began to explain what the fox told him. Fu felt sorry Naruto lost his parents in such a way, and Jiraiya was once again kicking himself for not being there and promising himself he wouldn't fail his new students like he did his sensei, Minato, Kushina, and the trio from AIM. Kyuubi said the Nanabe might help you. He said she won't want to fight Madara any more than he would. Wouldn't surprise me. It's not exactly smart to fight an opponent who can control you at will. Jiraiya said. You ready, Fu? Fu nodded before she too entered her mindscape. Fu found herself in her mindscape, a dark cave with dripping stalactites standing before a large cage. Inside was an enormous blue armored beetle with 6 wing-like tails, along with a 7th normal tail coming out of the end of its abdomen. So, Madara is alive, and likely the leader of this, Akatsuki. To think he survived all these years. Nanabe said, still surprised. You met him? Fu asked. No, but I am aware of him and his abilities. Kyuubi is right, loath as I am to admit that and that I must do this, but I will help you. I can have no true freedom so long as Madara lives, and I cannot face him myself. Fu looked surprised. She hadn't really expected her to help. Return to your friends and inform them you have my aid. Nanabe instructed. After Fu gave the news to Naruto and Jiraiya, the pair returned to their Biju. They found that training to use their chakra was much more difficult than everything else they had done so far. Calling on the chakra wasn't really that hard, especially after Jiraiya loosened Naruto's seal. What was hard was controlling themselves once they entered their tailed states, and the less control they had, the more the chakra damaged them. Worse still, channeling large amounts of their Biju's chakra, enough to enter the one-tailed state, poisoned and crippled their clones, ensuring they wouldn't be able to train in anything else and had to focus exclusively on their tenant's chakra. Still, with their Biju willingly, albeit begrudgingly, helping them, they made good progress. 2 months after beginning their training, they could enter the two-tailed state at will and control themselves. They began to lose control at 3 tails and were warned they would lose control at 4 for now. However, they found even though they had control, the chakra still poisoned their clones, crippling them and at high enough levels dispelling them. Their Biju informed them that unless they gained full control, which they didn't tell them how to do, just that they weren't ready, this effect would continue. They could, however, still use clones with their initial Jinchuriki forms. Jiraiya later informed them, much to their horror, that they would have to defeat their Biju within their mindscape in order to completely control their power, but that there was something they had to do beforehand if they were to have any hope of winning, but he didn't know what that requirement was. After another month, they increased their control to the 3rd tail and could remain somewhat in control in their 4-tailed state. Well, they could tell friend from foe anyway. Luckily for Jiraiya, who knew that even he would have trouble against those forms without Sage Mode. They had been told by their Biju that their current 4-tailed states were actually a second version of their chakra cloaks, and they automatically transformed into them because of their lack of control. The pair stood before Jiraiya in another clearing next to a river. Their Biju chakra training had pretty much destroyed the area they had been training in until now. Jiraiya had gotten out a sealing scroll for reasons they didn't yet know. Okay, kids, say goodbye because you won't be seeing each other for the next 2 months. Jiraiya said, shocking the pair. What are you talking about, pervy sage? Where are we going? Naruto asked. It's about time you get better acquainted with your summons and what they can do, so you and I will be spending the next 2 months with the toads while Fu learns from the chameleons. Jiraiya explained. In addition to allowing us to summon them, summoning contracts allow them to summon us to their home. So, once you've said your goodbyes, I want you to summon messengers and tell them about our plans. After that, they'll reverse summon us to their homes. Okay, Fu said as she turned to Naruto. Well, guess I'll see you in 2 months. Fu said sadly. Naruto smiled somewhat sadly at her. Don't worry about it, these 2 months will be over before you know it. Fu returned Naruto's smile. Besides, I'm sure we'll learn a lot of awesome techniques. Yeah, you're right, Fu said. You ready? Naruto nodded. Alright then, go ahead. Jiraiya said, and the two made the hand signs. Summoning jutsu. The pair slammed their hands to the ground, and in puffs of smoke, a fairly large, by normal standards, light green toad and brown chameleon appeared. What's up? The chameleon asked. I need you two to contact the great toad sages and the head of the chameleons. Jiraiya said. I want my 2 students here to learn how to use your abilities and work with you, so I want them to train with you guys for the next 2 months. Jiraiya explained, and the summons nodded. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there should be a portal in the chameleon's forest that leads to the land of Nex, like the toads have a portal that leads to Konoha, that right? Jiraiya asked the chameleon. Yeah, since the country and the Kubasaki clan have been destroyed, I guess we'll connect it to your village later, but for now, yes, the portal leads to the land of Nex. Good. Okay, that's all. Jiraiya said, and the 2 summons nodded and vanished. Jiraiya then walked to Fu and handed her the scroll. Alright, Fu, this scroll contains instructions on what I want you to do while you're with the chameleons, some techniques, knowledge of sealing arts, and a map with the place and time we'll meet. Okay, so Fu began before she disappeared in a poof of smoke. Naruto's eyes widened, but before he could say anything, he and Jiraiya vanished as well. When Naruto opened his eyes, he and Jiraiya were in a breathtaking mountain range with a rich and beautiful land. "So, your little Jiraiya's new pupil said an old male toad standing before him. "Huh, who are you, Grandpa Toad?" Naruto asked, and the toad chuckled at the name. "And why are you calling Pervy Sage, little?" Jiraiya grimaced when the toad heard Naruto refer to him like this. The toad laughed when he heard this. "Pervy Sage. That fits him perfectly," the toad said, still laughing. "Naruto, be mindful of who you're speaking to. This is Fukusaku, the head of the toads and the one who taught me the sage arts." Jiraiya scolded a shocked Naruto. "He reminds me a lot of you when you were young, little Jiraiya," Fukusaku said with a smile. "Though he lacks your perverted side. You're the one who taught Pervy Sage, huh? Hey, what are sage arts anyway?" "Well, it's a little early to teach you and you don't really fit the requirements yet, but there's no harm in explaining them to you," Fukusaku replied before he began to explain senjutsu to Naruto. At the same time, Fu reappeared in a lush forest brimming with insect life, standing before Shiromari. "It's been a long time, Fu. So, Riku tells me you wish to train with us for a while," the chameleon boss said. "Yeah, for the next 2 months. How've you been?" "Good, thank you again for allowing me to finally return to my family." "So, what can you tell me about you guys and what can I learn from you?" Daichi didn't really know much. "I've been told the two you've been traveling with have the Toad contract." "Well, we don't have anything like their senjutsu, but we can teach you some unique jutsu, how to imitate our camouflage abilities and how to work with us and use our abilities," Shiromari said. 3 days into his training, Naruto was laying on his back staring at the night sky. He had been amazed by what he learned of Sage Mode and Senjutsu, though they didn't start teaching him yet. Surprisingly enough, he understood what they were talking about without them having to dumb things down or create analogies. He had to admit, Jiraiya's insistence on having his clones read and memorize all those books was paying off. He knew that before that, a lot of what Fukusaku said would have completely gone over his head. He had also thought of ways to use the wind-like Sage Mode manipulated natural energy and thought up a few new techniques based on the idea. These ideas were only possible due to their training with their elements with those 5-pronged seals. While there, he had a reunion with Gamakichi, Gamatatsu, and Gamabunta, and they and Fukusaku had told him of some of the Toad's other abilities. At the moment, he was wondering how Fu was doing with the chameleons. He found himself missing her more than he thought he would, more than he did Sakura. When he thought about it, he enjoyed being around her more than he did Sakura, too. "Hey, kid, what are ya doing out here by yourself?" Gamakichi asked. He was probably Naruto's best friend among the Toads. He had grown a lot since Naruto last saw him, now being about 4 feet tall. "Huh, oh, nothing, just thinking. About that girl you've been traveling with?" Gamakichi asked with a smirk. "Wah, what? No. Heh, yeah right. But I thought that pink-haired girl was your main squeeze." "Yeah, well, she likes someone else so," Naruto trailed off sadly. "Ah, man, that's rough," Gamakichi said. "Anyway, what do you think of that girl?" "Huh, well, she's been through the same things I have and I like spending time with her. Actually, I think I might like being around her more than Sakura." "That's so," Gamakichi smirked. "Wait, you mean she's a Jinchuriki? Huh, that's interesting. So, what were you thinking about?" "It's nothing. Just forget about it." Over the next 2 months, the Jinchuriki met many of the Toads and chameleons and learned their specific abilities and how to work with them and use their abilities as well as collaborative techniques. Naruto also had the misfortune of being invited to Ma and Pa for dinner. Jiraiya wisely made an excuse and got out of going himself. Fu learned to imitate the chameleon's camouflage abilities, though even with half her clones focusing on it, it took her a month. Like the chameleons, She could completely hide her presence, though sensors and dojutsu users could still find her. She had also found some unique species of insects in the chameleon's forest. Thanks to the Nanabi, unlike the Aburame and Kamizuru clans, she wasn't limited to one species of insect, and she took 2 of those species into her body in addition to the chakra-eating beetles she already had. As Jiraiya's scroll instructed, the clones that weren't helping her learn to work with the chameleons and use their abilities were mainly focusing on water jutsu. Fu discovered that, after training with that 5-pronged seal for 5 months, she was able to pull water out of the moisture in the air for her jutsu, though it was easier to use bodies of water. Naruto found that, thanks to his skill with wind chakra control, he could use some of his sword's abilities, such as creating wind blades, without it. All their other skills showed normal improvement. Jiraiya also made sure Naruto's strategic skills had improved and that he understood what it meant to lead a mission and beat him into the ground some more to increase his combat experience and his ability to read his opponent's moves. In addition, the pair began to learn sealing jutsu. Naruto under Jiraiya and Fu from Jiraiya's instructions and books on the art included in the scroll the pervert had given her. However, the pair found this to be the hardest thing they had learned next to controlling their tenant's powers. They got basic seals like standard storage seals rather easily, but Fu had trouble after that. Naruto had a natural talent for it, not surprising given his heritage, but it was still difficult for him even with his shadow clones. Today was the day they got back together. Naruto and Jiraiya had been summoned by one of the stronger toads just outside Konoha about a week ago and had made their way to their meeting place, a clearing he selected in the Land of Fire just outside the border of the Land of Rivers. As they walked into the clearing, they found Fu sitting on a stone looking in their direction. Her insects had alerted her to their approach. "Took you long enough," Fu said with a smirk as she got off the rock and walked to the 2. "Good to see you. I missed you guys." "Same here, Fu," Naruto said with a smile. After their reunion was over, they explained what they had learned to each other. 2 days later, Naruto and Fu were sparring in a clearing by a river. Their clones were training as usual down the river. Both were wearing Jiraiya's 4 limbs weighting seals. The sun was beginning to set and they were just about done for the day, the weight seal beads on their arms already red and ready to come off. Both their taijutsu styles relied on the speed they had gained while training with the weight seals, but Naruto's focused on strength whereas Fu used her flexibility to gracefully avoid attacks and counter, not that her blows weren't strong too. The 2 traded blows for a while. Naruto was more skilled at taijutsu, but Fu's style gave her the advantage. While he blocked most of Fu's attacks and this was wearing him down, Fu dodged his attacks. Naruto was on the ropes. The spar ended when Fu ducked under a punch and grabbed his arm. Fu flipped him over her shoulder. Naruto landed on his back and Fu pinned him to the ground, sitting on his waist. "Looks like I win, Naruto," Fu said with a smirk. "Yeah, but, can you get up?" Naruto asked with a blush. Fu looked confused before she realized how she had positioned herself and jumped back with a blush of her own. Before either had a chance to break the awkward silence, they heard footsteps and saw Jiraiya walk out of the tree line, having seen the whole thing, with a smirk. Didn't expect you 2 to move so fast," Jiraiya said. It's not like that, Ero-sensei," Fu said, her blush deepening. "Yeah, stop thinking like, what the?" Naruto yelled the last part as he saw something in the river out of the corner of his eye. "You're going to have to better than that to distract me, kid," Jiraiya said. "I'm not trying to, you old perv. There's someone in the river," Naruto shouted as he ran to the river. Jiraiya and Fu looked to the river in shock and saw what he had seen: 3 men floating in the river unconscious. What the hell? 10 minutes later, the 3 had been looked over. Jiraiya decided it was a good time to test what they had learned about the local herbs and first aid from their readings, and they had done a fairly good job of patching the 3 up, though Fu proved better at it. After they got up, they told the three men their names. Thanks. You may have saved our lives. One of the men said. You're welcome. So, who are you guys anyway? And how did you wind up in the river? Naruto asked and was surprised to see his question dampened their spirits. After a moment, one of the men spoke up. My name is Rokusuke and we're miners from Katabami, a village in the land of rivers. I know you just saved our lives but, please, I beg you to help us again. You have to help us get to Konohagakure. Katabami. Jiraiya asked with a raised brow. Oh yeah, that village with the gold mine. Why are you in such a hurry to Konoha? Is there trouble? Our village has been taken over by a gang called the Kurosuke family. They force us to work the mine regardless of our health, the weather, we're basically slaves, Rokusuke said. I see, the sage said. If you understand then please, we have to get to Konoha quickly, Kanpachi is. Rokusuke, come on. It hurts but by now he's gotta be, one of the men said sadly as he placed his hand on Rokusuke's shoulder. What happened to him? Fu asked. The leader of the Kurosuke family, Raiga, has funerals for everyone who displeases him. One of the other men said, his eyes downcast as funerals for friends passed before his eyes. He buries them alive and then cries over them as if they were a close friend. The teen ninja were shocked and scandalized by this. Jiraiya's eyes narrowed. In his long career, he had seen worse things happen to innocent people. Of course, his teammate had been Orochimaru. The whole situation reminded Naruto of the Land of Waves. We managed to escape when he was holding one of these funerals for our friend, but by now. That's terrible. Sounds like this guy's crazy. Wait, Raiga. Raiga Kurosuke? Naruto asked. Jiraiya had him and Fu memorize Konoha's bingo book and a few others versions of the bingo book not distributed in ninja villages during their readings and he recognized the name. He had to admit it was a good idea as he recalled the hapless fools who picked a fight with Jiraiya, not recognizing him until they heard his name. Yeah, how do you know him? He asked a little fearful. They didn't seem the type but if they were somehow affiliated with him, they were screwed. Then they noticed Naruto's forehead protector. Wait, you three are from Konoha? Yeah, we're on a training trip under Jiraiya of the Sannin. Naruto said gesturing to Jiraiya. He didn't use his nickname for the pervert because he thought it wouldn't inspire much confidence from the three. Had the situation been different, Jiraiya would have smirked at being called something other than pervy sage by the blonde. To answer your question, we recognize him from the bingo book. Fu explained. Bingo books are books that, in general, list dangerous ninja. Raiga is an A- class missing nin from Kurigakure, the second highest level of ninja and he has a 20 million ryo bounty on his head. He's also a former member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist, a group made of the greatest sword-wielding ninja in Kiri. The three were shocked to hear how high Raiga's bounty was. Huh, we can't very well just leave them like this. Jiraiya said. So kids, what do ya say? How about we help them out? His apprentices smiled confidently and nodded. Are you crazy? You can't take him on by yourselves. Rokusuke said. Listen, remember when Fu here said Raiga was the second highest level? Well, I'm an S-class ninja, the highest class. Trust me when I say I can handle anything he and his group can throw at me. Jiraiya said and the trio of miners' eyes widened when they heard this. Let's use this to see how you've improved. I'll watch over the mission and, if things go south, I'll be there to bail you out. Sound good? You got it. You guys ready to go? We've got a village to save. Naruto said with a grin. Day later, the group was walking down a path in a forest towards the village of Katabami. As they went, they were told more of the conditions the Kurosuke clan put them in and Rokusuke constantly complaining about the speed they traveled at. It seemed he was still holding out hope that their friend was alive even after being buried for so long, but his friends were more realistic and tried to make him see the truth. It was near sunset when they walked out of the forest and saw a curry shop by the side of the road. What's this? Curry of Life shop? Huh. We can use that as our base. Let's see if we can spend the night here and get to business in the morning. Jiraiya said as they came to the shop and entered. An old woman who was cleaning the counter looked up when they walked in. Well, it's been a while since anyone's come here. I'm Sancho. Welcome, please, take a seat. Would you like me to fix you something or you just want to rest a bit? The woman said with a smile. Thanks, I think we'd all like a bite to eat. How about the house special? Jiraiya asked. Sure, I'll have some of my special curry ready in a minute. Sancho replied as she turned to a cooking pot. A few minutes later, they were all seated at two tables, Jiraiya and his students at one and the miners at another. Before them each was a glass of water with a spoon. So, that mountain we saw was the Katabami gold mine? Naruto asked. That's right. So, what do you plan to do? Well, tomorrow, we'll scout out the village, try to get an idea how many enemies there are, their positions and level, that kind of thing, then we'll come up with a plan of attack. Naruto said. He really is a bit more mature. The old Naruto would probably have wanted to just charge in head first, thinking everything would turn out okay. Jiraiya thought to himself with a grin. Just then, Sancho walked to their tables with trays. Here you are. It's my specialty, the curry of life. The old woman said as she placed their plates on their tables. The sauce was black and bubbled, obviously spicy to an extreme. The group looked down at the curry before Naruto. Fu and the miners turned to Jiraiya and glared at him slightly. What are you all looking at me for? Jiraiya asked as he noticed the glares. Isn't it obvious? Fu asked. You're the one who ordered this. Naruto said. Yes, well, let's just eat. We don't want to seem ungrateful. Jiraiya said, obviously not too pleased either, and the others reluctantly nodded before they all took a spoonful of the curry and slowly took their first bites, then all their faces turned bright red and their eyes bulged. Seconds later, screams of pain could be heard outside the shop. Everyone was paralyzed by the intense spices for a moment before the ninja recovered and quickly grabbed their glasses and drank half the water in one gulp, gasping for breath afterwards. The miners still hadn't recovered. Wow, that's some curry, Jiraiya said to their host. Why thank you, it's famous around these parts. I remember the last Konoha ninja who came through here. He collapsed from exhaustion, but one spoonful of my curry and he was wide awake. Sancho replied with a smile. Yeah, I'll bet, Naruto said. I don't think anyone could sleep through that. So, you're here by yourself. You don't have anyone to help out around here? Naruto said, thinking about using his shadow clones to help out. It might save them a bill, not that they couldn't pay, and it would be nice to help out the old woman. Sancho looked down sadly. Well, I do have a son, Karashi, but he went off to join that Kurosuke family, she said sadly as she closed her eyes, thinking of her son. I shouldn't have pushed him, always telling him to be strong and to stand up for himself. What, are you saying he just left you here to worry about him? Fu was surprised. The jerk. Don't worry Grandma Sancho, we'll get him back for you. Naruto said. Oh, you don't need to trouble yourselves. It's no trouble. We're here to take care of these guys anyway, so it's not like we'll be going out of our way or anything. Naruto replied and the shop owner smiled. Thank you, young man. You can stay here the night, free of charge if you like. Sancho said. That night, Naruto and Jiraiya stayed in one room while the miners slept in another and Fu had her own room. Naruto was sitting on his bed and Jiraiya was looking out the window, both slightly tense. Something told them something was off. In her room, Fu had a similar feeling. Suddenly, the three heard loud footsteps down the hall. This is terrible, shouted one of the miners just before he opened the door to Naruto and Jiraiya's room. Rokusuke's gone. He must have headed to town on his own. Fu threw open the door of her own room when she heard this. Damn, at this rate, he'll get himself killed. So much for strategy. If we take our time now, he's dead. Naruto said as he stood up. Let's go. We need to hurry. Fu said. Rokusuke ran towards the village, intent on digging up his friend. Hoping against all odds that he had somehow survived all this time. Unbeknownst to him, he was sensed by Raiga's partner, Renmara, as Raiga stood on a cliff overlooking the town. Someone's coming, Raiga, Renmara said from his place on the swordsman's back. A pity, it seems we'll have to hold another funeral. Raiga said sadly, sniffling a bit at the end. It was early morning when Rokusuke finally made it to his village. The sun had barely begun to rise. He snuck in as quietly as he could and was trying to dig his friend out. He sat there at his grave on his knees, his hands bruised from digging, but he didn't care. Hang on, Kanpachi, I'll get you out. Rokusuke said. Need a hand? A voice asked. Rokusuke looked up and saw he was surrounded by 7 black cloaked and hooded figures. He yelled out in shock and fell back, knowing there was no escape. Naruto and Fu rushed towards the village. Fu was cursing herself for not placing an insect on the man to track him. They had both seen the way he was acting, although they thought he would be smarter than this, she should have taken a precaution. As they ran through the forest, Fu sent out a wave of insects ahead of them to collect whatever information they could before they arrived. They reached the village a few minutes later and looked down to see a group of villagers being forced into harsh labor while 4 black-cloaked men, members of the Kurosuke family as they had been described, watched over them. Their eyes narrowed as they saw these people. Like the miner had told them, they were basically slaves, they had little to no rights. While they watched, several of Fu's insects flew to her and she held up her hand and allowed them to land on her arm. How many are there? Naruto asked and Fu paused for a moment as the insect relayed all the information it had gathered to her. There are a total of 14 spread throughout the town. 9 of them are together, those 4 down there and 1 off by himself. Most of them have low Chunin level chakra, 1 has less than the average genin, that's probably Karashi, and the 1 on his own has mid-jonin level reserves. That 1 must be Raiga. Fu said, frowning as the insect informed her of something odd. But, there's a second chakra signature on Raiga. What do you mean? Naruto asked with narrowed eyes. It's like there's someone strapped to his back under his cloak. Fu responded. Before either could ponder the meaning of this, their eyes widened as an old man who was being forced to work was suddenly unable to stand anymore. He fell over and all the raw ore he was carrying was spilled on the ground. The 4 thugs surrounded and threatened old man with a funeral if he didn't pick up the ore and get back to work. Alright, looks like that's our cue. Let's try to take these 4 out as quietly as we can. Naruto said and Fu nodded before they each made a hand sign and created a single shadow clone. The now 4 teens then traveled underground with a jutsu. The 4 thugs watched with smirks, some laughing as the man frantically gathered the spilled ore before their eyes widened as 4 pairs of hands shot out of the ground and grabbed their ankles. They didn't even have time to cry out in shock before they were pulled deep underground, where they were covered in and drained dry of chakra by Fu's insects, their cries muffled by the ground. The old man looked where the men stood in disbelief for a few moments before Naruto, Fu, their clones and the unconscious criminals emerged from the ground in front of him. Okay, tie these guys up and cover their mouths. Naruto ordered the clones as he threw them some rope. You alright, old man? You, what have you done? The man said fearfully. They'll give me a funeral for sure. Don't worry, we'll take care of them. Fu said before they all looked up as they heard a gong. What's that? Did we set off an alarm? Naruto asked. No, it's a summon, they're calling us to a funeral. The old man said. A funeral, do you think? Naruto asked Fu. Rokusuke. Fu said. She then mentally called out to her insects, calling one back for an update. Yes, I heard they captured him this morning. The last 9 members of the gang should be over there. Fu said. What about Raiga? Naruto asked as the insect returned and she reached out her hand and let it land on her finger. He's not there, he must still be off on his own somewhere. Fu replied. Alright, come on, let's save this guy and take out all of the underlings while we're at it. Naruto said and Fu nodded before Naruto turned to their clones. You two make sure these guys don't do anything funny. Raiga looked down on the funeral from a cliff. He loved funerals, they brought people together in mourning and remembrance. I remember when I first met Rokusuke, it's a happy memory. Raiga said. Is it? Renmara asked. Yes, I remember the smile he gave when we liberated the gold mine, that's how I'll always remember him. Raiga replied as tears fell from his eyes. Will you hold a nice funeral for me too? Don't talk like that, you're not going to die. Besides, I don't need a funeral to recall all the good times we've shared. Raiga, they're coming. Good, I want to see who he brought to rescue him. Raiga said as he wiped the last of his tears away. There are 3 of them, one of them seems to be watching, be careful, Raiga. Renmara warned. Even Jiraiya couldn't hide from his abilities. Don't worry, I will, after all, you'll be there with me. Naruto and Fu arrived to see the group of thugs in a large graveyard digging a grave for Rokusuke. They frowned as they watched them prepare to bury the man alive and thought that all these graves marked where someone suffered the same fate. Already having a plan, the 2 created 4 shadow clones each. The Jinchuriki and 3 of their clones then spread out silently using, Earth-style, underground move jutsu. After moving into position, they waited a few more moments before making their move. Several of the thugs chuckled to themselves as they dug the newest grave before they sensed something. They turned to see a pair of teens rushing them. They charged to meet them and were shocked when everyone who met the 3 ahead of the group were all defeated in seconds. They were weak by ninja standards, many genin could defeat them, but it was still more than enough to subdue a village of civilians. One jumped to the side to avoid an axe kick from Fu only to suddenly be finding a whip of water wrapped around his waist and arms. He barely had time to voice his surprise before electricity flowed through the water and he was shocked into unconsciousness. Another was suddenly blasted away by a powerful ball of wind. 2 more clones came out of the ground in between them, separating the remaining criminals. The thugs were quickly dealt with. In under a minute they were all on the ground unconscious. Huh, that was easy. Naruto said. They had decent reserves, but they were poorly trained. Fu observed. Alright, you guys get Rokusuke out of there. The clones all ran towards the coffin the miner was locked in. As they did, Naruto looked over at the last remaining gang member standing, he was using a grave marker to shield himself. So, I'm guessing you're Sancho's son, Karashi. Fu said as she looked at the young man. Huh, yeah, what of it? Karashi asked, crossing his arms and acting tough now that they weren't hostile. How can you just leave that nice old lady alone like that? Do you know how much she's worried about you? Naruto frowned at him. So what? Besides, their leader is a great man, he liberated this village. What's your definition of liberating? Fu asked. This is basically slavery. How can you work for these people? Because now I'm part of something powerful. Really? So are you strong now? You hid behind your allies and let them do all the fighting for you. Naruto said. Either you're still weak, or deep down you know this is wrong. Karashi looked up at him. Besides, if you really want to be strong, then you need to be able to stand up for yourself. And what is it you plan to do with that strength? Do you really want to be strong at a cost like this? What if your mother did something to anger Raiga? Would you just stand by and let them bury her too? Karashi knew they were right, but he was still too afraid to go against the Kurosuke or try to stand on his own. He decided to act like he had truly seen the error of his ways and see which way the wind blew. You're right, I've been a fool. Please, forgive me, Karashi begged. Fine, Naruto said as his and Fu's clones walked to them with Rokusuke. Both saw through Karashi but knew he wasn't strong enough to really do anything. Alright, you guys know the drill. Tie them up, stay here and watch over them. Rokusuke, you alright? Yeah, thanks for saving my life again. I'm sorry but I just couldn't leave my friend buried alive like that. Rokusuke said. I understand, for what it's worth, I'm sorry we couldn't save him. Fu said and the miner nodded. I shouldn't have to tell you to stay here. The green-haired girl then walked over and looked around before looking up at a cliff. That's all of them, all that's left is Raiga. Good, then let's finish this. Naruto said as they moved at ninja speed up the cliff, leaving behind the miner, the thugs, the wannabe and their clones. Naruto and Fu arrived at the top of the cliff and looked around. They were on a rocky plateau and seemed to be alone. Do you know where he is? Not yet. Fu replied. She sent a command to her insects to return an update on Raiga's position. Suddenly, a thick mist appeared out of nowhere. I know this, it's the hidden mist jutsu. Naruto said as he looked around. Fu nodded, having read about the technique and sent out a swarm of her insects. Raiga looked down on them from a ledge overlooking the plateau, observing the two teens that had decimated his gang. What do you think, Renmara? It's incredible. They have enormous chakra reserves. One of them seems to be manipulating insects, my illusions won't work on them. Renmara said. I see, are you ready, Renmara? Yes, Raiga. Fu had called back one of the insects that had managed to land on Raiga when she sent them out. She looked up at the nearby cliff. Up there, Fu said, pointing to the cliff. Got it. Wind style. Great breakthrough. Naruto called out before he unleashed a gust of wind that blew away the mist and tore across the plateau towards Raiga. Raiga skipped backwards and focused chakra to his feet to anchor himself to the ground. He held up his arms to shield his face as the blast of wind hit. Raiga grunted with effort as he channeled as much chakra as he could to keep from being blown away. While he and Renmara had been talking about Rokusuke's funeral and watching the following events, the insects Fu had tagged him with, 12 in total and 10 still remaining, had been draining his chakra. While such a small amount of the bugs could only do so much, they had been working on Raiga for a while now. Naruto and Fu kicked off as fast as they could towards the cliff and quickly ran up to where Raiga stood as the mist began to cover the area again, drawing their swords as they went. Naruto reached the top first, jumped into the air and came down with a downward slash meant to cut Raiga in half. Raiga brought his blades, covered in bandages, together in an X formation to block and channeled lightning through them as Naruto channeled wind through his. The blades met with a clang and the two stood their ground. You seem strong, and your eyes show such determination. Raiga said. I may hold a funeral for you after this is over. You're the one who's going to need a funeral, pal. Naruto said before the both jumped back. Naruto slashed his sword repeatedly, creating 3 blades of wind but was shocked when he heard a young voice predict his movements and warn Raiga, who then easily dodged his attacks. Raiga, behind you. The voice called out and Raiga spun around to block a flame-covered slash from Fu. Fu summoned a water blade to her left hand while holding Okibi no Yaiba in her right and mimicked Raiga, canceling the fire and channeling lightning through her swords and the two clashed in a fierce exchange of swordplay. Fu had a speed advantage but Raiga's ally predicted her every move and warned him, allowing him to dodge each strike before Naruto joined the fray. Raiga quickly found himself outmatched trying to fight the pair together. He channeled as much chakra into his legs as he could and jumped back. After about a dozen feet before he impaled his Kiba blades into the ground, not only to slow him down but also to prepare an attack. Lightning Funeral. Feast of Lightning. Raiga yelled before a wave of lightning bolts cut through the ground towards them. Naruto countered with a slash of his Hishotaichi, unleashing his Tempest Wind attack. The whirlwind tore across the ground and dispersed the lightning. Fu slashed her sword, creating several dragons of fire as Naruto charged forward. The dragons twisted around him and flew towards Raiga. As Raiga dodged the first two, the third reared up and dive-bombed him and he jumped back to dodge. Raiga, he's right in front of you using the flames as cover. Renmara warned and Raiga brought his swords together. Ninja art. Lightning ball. Raiga yelled and he threw a ball of pure lightning at the blonde. The ball hit as Naruto came out of the remnants of the fire and electrocuted him. He's a clone. Renmara yelled and Naruto turned to smoke. To your right. Renmara warned and Raiga turned to see a twisting cyclone carving a path towards him. He jumped to the side and Naruto lunged forwards intent on impaling the man. Raiga blocked with his left blade and attacked with used his right to attack with a stab of his own. Without Fu's aid, Naruto quickly found himself on the defensive as Raiga's two swords gave him an advantage. Raiga went for a downward slash but had to disengage and jump back to dodge another fire dragon before being attacked from two sides from Naruto and Fu. He dodged a stab aimed at his stomach from Fu and blocked a slash from Naruto. However, Naruto followed up that slash with a kick that Raiga barely managed to dodge. Unfortunately for the swordsman, the kick hit the bag on Raiga's back and Renmara was sent flying. Raiga. Renmara called out. Renmara. Raiga yelled, worried about his only friend. Without Renmara's aid and now running dangerously low on chakra, he was now at a serious disadvantage and was quickly overwhelmed by Naruto and Fu's combined swordplay. Fu covered her blade with flame and slashed downwards at Raiga, who blocked with both his blades, leaving him open to a upward diagonal slash from Naruto. He skipped backwards but suffered a shallow cut across his stomach and chest from Naruto's sword. Fu sheathed her sword and made a hand sign, creating three shadow clones who threw shuriken as they drew their swords and charged. Do you really think that will help you? Raiga yelled, enraged at the loss of Renmara as he deflected the projectiles. Renmara, hang on. I'll come and get you as soon as I'm finished here. Raiga blocked a slash from a clone when the clone he had locked blades with smirked. Before he could react, the three clones exploded, sending him flying back and leaving him wide open as Naruto lunged forward. Don't. Renmara yelled but it was too late and Naruto impaled Raiga through the chest. Raiga coughed up blood and looked weakly at his opponent. I guess, I'll be the one needing the funeral after all, Raiga said as he coughed up more blood. Hey, please, take care of Renmara. These were the swordsman's last words. His body went limp as he said them and he breathed his last, his swords falling to the ground. Naruto and Fu looked at the man, slightly remorseful. Both of them had realized whoever was helping him was likely a close friend. Naruto created a clone, ordered it to seal up the body and the swords in two separate scrolls before he and Fu walked over to where Renmara lay on the ground in a bag. Fu's insects swarmed around the bag, ready to attack if whoever was inside proved hostile. So, this is who was helping Raiga. He must have a dojutsu. Naruto said as he walked over. Fu nodded and she unzipped the bag, revealing the boy. You're the one who was helping him? Fu asked, surprised to see he was so young, but what truly surprised them was the look in the boy's eyes. A look they had seen in their own, a look of someone who had no meaning in their life. Someone with no reason to live. Yes, we were together, since that day, Renmara began before he told them of how he had met Raiga. That day, Naruto asked, I lived in a village, in a shabby cabin. I've always been frail and I have no memory of my parents. I survived only because the other villagers took pity on me and left me food. But even though I was so weak, I had a power no one else had. My eyes allowed me to see the outside world, but when they found out about that power, they stopped helping me. I would have starved to death, had it not been for Raiga. One day, he and a group of Anbu came to the village in search of a traitor. With my eyes I saw him, crying. He, too, had no meaning in his life. He took pity on me and took me with him. From that day forward, I was his eyes and he was my arms and legs. We've always been together ever since. But now that he's gone, my life has no meaning. The Jinchuriki's eyes widened as they heard this. Naruto was reminded of Haku, the boy who had put him on his path and taught him what was truly important. You have a job, don't you? Please, finish it. You can't be serious. Fu said. Renmara, I knew someone just like you once. Naruto said sadly. Ironically enough, he also helped one of the 7 swordsmen. Fu remembered hearing this before. He was Zabuza's apprentice Haku. He saw himself as nothing but a tool and thought that, once his usefulness to Zabuza was outlived, his life would lose all meaning. When I beat him and he thought he wasn't strong enough to remain Zabuza's tool, he asked me to kill him. Then you've already heard this before. I can't go on alone, without a purpose. Renmara said, looking up to the sky. Is that what Raiga would want? Naruto asked and Renmara turned to him. Renmara, both of us know what that's like. Fu said. We were both shunned in our villages for reasons we had no control over. Almost no one cared about us. Most people just wanted us gone. We had nothing to live for, until we found people who understood and accepted us. Renmara, Raiga's last words were to ask us to make sure you lived on. If you don't want to continue living for yourself, do it for him. But, I can't go on alone like this. Then find new people who accept you. Naruto said. There are lots of people here who would help you. I'm sure the old woman at the curry shop outside of town would treat you like family. And you could always come to Konoha. Unlike Kiri, they love bloodline holders there and I'm sure Grandma Tsunade could help you with your illness. Renmara said nothing. Well, at least give it a shot. Okay. Raiga wanted me too, so I guess I'll try. Naruto had a clone pick the boy up and the group returned to town. The clones they left behind had long since finished with the remaining gang members and tied up the other members of the Kurosuke family. Karashi hadn't tried anything either. After being thanked by the people of the town, the Jinchuriki, along with Renmara and Karashi, returned to the Curry of Life shop, where Karashi was given Sancho's 300% spicy punishment curry. Renmara decided to stay at the shop, where he was welcomed by Grandma Sancho and the now truly reformed Karashi and Jiraiya. Naruto and Fu quickly made an excuse to leave when Sancho offered them extra spicy curry as a reward. So, how'd we do, Ero-sensei? Fu asked, curious of how he evaluated the way they handled their mission. Well, you did a pretty good job. You planned ahead and got a good idea of the enemy forces before making your move. You took out the first group as quietly as you could and avoided detection as you moved through the village but were forced to move early due to Rokusuke. You saved him and had backup and escape plans ready and took no chances with your own safety or that of the villagers. You made sure Renmara wasn't a threat before trusting him and you managed to take down a member of the 7 swordsmen. I'd say, you handled it like a chunin. Speaking of Raiga, what do you plan to do with his swords? His bounties double if they're included and you already have a sword. I think I'll keep his them, might find a use for them later. Naruto said. Fu should take the bounty. I don't really need it. I have more than enough to live off of from my casino winnings. It was true, he did still have about 60 million left. And with his luck at gambling, he would have no trouble making more. He was only banned from casinos in that one town in the land of rivers. No, Naruto. It was a joint effort, so let's split it. You could have taken him alone. Naruto pointed out. It was true. Alone, Fu may have been forced to go 3 tails, but that would have been more than enough. Fu, just keep it. Like he said, he can easily make money with his luck. Now come on, after we collect Raiga's bounty, we're heading back to that clearing we found those 3 miners in. Though it took some more convincing, Fu was eventually talked into keeping the bounty. Jiraiya also decided to send them after a few more bounties for practice and real combat experience before they returned to Konoha. After they reached the clearing, they worked on learning new jutsu and perfecting everything they knew. 4 more months and they had become fairly skilled with seals, high chunin to low jonin level with genjutsu, and Naruto's space-time jutsu abilities had improved. Their other skills showed normal improvement. They always had Jiraiya's weight seals on, further improving their physical abilities, and Naruto learned to use the Kiba blades and their lightning powers. They also went on 3 bounty hunting missions for experience. The first being a low jonin with a bounty of 10 million ryo, the second had been worth 7 million, and the third being a group of 8 chunin level missing nin and bandits led by a low jonin. Together these ninja were worth 14 million. That particular job showed good planning skills, as the group had taken many civilians hostage to use as slaves and they managed to save them all. Naruto couldn't convince Fu to keep all of it, and the 31 million was split between them. There was still a little over half a year left before it was time to return to Konoha, and Jiraiya decided that it was again time to take a week-long break, this time in a resort town with hot springs on the outskirts of the Land of Fire. The two had grown a bit. Naruto now stood at 5 feet 3 and Fu at 5 feet 2. Fu's clothing style was mostly unchanged aside from the fact that her bandages had been replaced with fishnet armor that didn't cover her midriff. Naruto's tracksuit had been replaced with one that had black where the old one had blue and around the zipper. Naruto walked through the town alone. Jiraiya was off at a peaking on a hot spring and Fu was relaxing in another hot spring, which Jiraiya made sure was far away from the one he was at because 1. She threatened to use a water sword enhanced 1,000 years of death if she caught him peeping on her, and 2. The last time she caught him peeping on a hot spring she wasn't in, she got Naruto and shrieked as loud as she could. Eek! Pervert! There's a peeping Tom peeking on the hot springs, which resulted in Jiraiya being beaten senseless by a horde of angry women while Naruto and Fu laughed their off at the spectacle. Naruto had been thinking about Fu. He had never connected with someone as well as he had with her, and he couldn't deny he thought she was attractive. They had grown very close over the past 2 years since they left Taki, talking about their experiences, likes, dislikes, and sharing various troubles and laughs, and he really liked spending time with her. As he was consumed with his thoughts of his mint-haired companion, he walked by a stand and something caught his eye. The stand had all sorts of decorations, ornaments and masks, but what had come to his attention was an orange hair clip. Naruto couldn't help but think how it would match the green-haired Jinchuriki's eyes. The stand owner, a middle-aged man, noticed the teen looking at his wares and, after waiting for a few moments to see if something would hold his interest, spoke up. "Hey, kid, see anything you like?" the proprietor asked. Naruto's head snapped from the ornament to the man. "Huh, oh, yeah, I guess, that hair clip." "Huh." The man looked at the orange hair clip. "Ah, got yourself a girlfriend?" "What? No, I mean, she," Naruto sputtered. There's this girl I know and I think she'd like it, that's all." The stand owner smirked knowingly and chuckled. "Hey, whatever you say, kid. It's 80 ryo. The blonde paid for it and left." Naruto walked around town for the rest of the day. He had some snacks, played some games and bought some souvenirs. It was a few minutes before sunset and the sun was just over the horizon, painting the sky orange and the clouds a rusty red. He jumped to the top of a building searching for his friend to find her sitting on a nearby roof, watching the beautiful scenery. "Hey, Fu, what are you doing up here?" Naruto asked as he landed nearby. Fu turned to look at the boy. "Oh, hey Naruto, just watching the sunset," she responded, looking back towards the sun. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" "Huh," Naruto answered dumbly before looking to the sky. "Yeah, it is. I'm surprised I never noticed it before. In Taki, I would almost always climb to the top of the sacred tree and watch the sunset. It helped that I didn't have to worry about the glares up there. Fu said and Naruto nodded. Oh yeah, I got you this. Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out the hairclip he'd bought. The girl looked surprised at the gift. You got this for me? Fu asked as she took it and looked at it in her hand. Why? I thought it would look good on you, it matches your eyes. My eyes? The green-haired girl raised a brow. Yeah, when we first met, I was drawn to them. You have beautiful eyes, Fu. Naruto elaborated with a smile, causing Fu to blush before giving him a slightly annoyed look. You're just saying that because they're your favorite color. Fu stated and Naruto shook his head. It's not just that. From the moment I saw them, I thought there was something striking about them. Not just the color, it's just, I don't know. I always thought they were stunning. Fu's blush deepened from the blonde's words. I also noticed that they had the same look mine used to have. I knew you had been through the same thing I had, that hell called loneliness. That's why I couldn't leave you like that. Naruto smiled. And yeah, they are my favorite color. He said in a playful manner, causing Fu to giggle. Thank you, for that and the hairclip, this is the first thing anyone's ever given me. Fu said with a heartfelt smile before she attempted to put it on. Here, let me. Naruto reached with his hand. The green-haired girl handed him the hairclip and Naruto placed it above her right eye. There. The blonde smiled. It suits you perfectly, you look really pretty. Fu's blush deepened as Naruto's gaze turned back to the sky. Since they left Taki, the two had grown closer and Fu had begun to recognize that her feelings for the boy may be deeper than friendship. After a moment of thought, she made a decision. Naruto. Huh. Naruto turned to face the green-haired girl, only for her soft lips to land on his in a delicate kiss. It was a small, chaste kiss, but it still managed to bring a deep blush to both of their faces. It was over almost as quickly as it began with both of them jerking back as if scalded. Fu turned her face away in embarrassment. Naruto opened his mouth to speak, however, his mind was so disjointed that he couldn't even form a proper sentence. Fu. What? Fu turned back to him, uneasiness coursing through her as she struggled to tell him how she felt. Her heart wouldn't stop beating as she tried to voice her feelings. Naruto, I like you, I mean, the green-haired girl closed her eyes, taking a deep breath before opening her eyes and staring into the blonde cerulean pools. I want to be with you. Naruto's eyes widened in astonishment at Fu's admission. This girl, whose presence he'd come to enjoy even more than Sakura's, felt that way about him. Finding it hard to voice his thoughts due to his shock and the emotions coursing through him, he asked, why would you want to be with me? Now that she had said it, she knew there was no backing out. The fear of rejection, the fear that she may have ruined her relationship with her fellow Jinchuriki dominated her being as she answered his question. I've admired you ever since you saved my former village. And my admiration only grew when I found out you were like me. That you stayed cheerful and happy, and had such a strong will, despite living the same life I had. Your resolve, your drive to never give up and the fact that you showed your village they were wrong about you inspired me when I was starting to lose hope and I realized I wanted to be more like you. The time since I left Taki has been the happiest of my life, because you were there with me. During all the time we spent together, your drive, your goals became mine, and I realized that I wanted to spend more time with you. That I wanted to keep sharing and facing the good and the bad, together. In the haze that dominated Naruto's mind, a question arose. Why would you tell me when you knew how I felt about Sakura? The fear and certainty that she was going to be rejected brought tears to her eyes. Not wanting to show them, Fu stood and turned her back to Naruto. Because, it would be better to take the plunge and be rejected than to keep this bottled up. Fu closed her eyes, willing the tears away as she swallowed the lump in her throat. This was it. He probably still had feelings for his teammate. At least she had tried. She hoped at least things wouldn't be too awk. Her eyes shot open when she felt a pair of arms wrap around her and she found herself in the blonde's embrace. The truth is, the blonde began, his head at her shoulder. I really liked Sakura in the past. But then I met someone else. He eased his hold over her and turned Fu around, facing her shocked look. This smart, beautiful girl I was drawn to from the moment I met her. This wonderful girl, who over the years I came to care for more than I ever did for Sakura. He cupped her cheek, giving her a warm, gentle smile. I met you. I want to be together with you and, I really like you too, Fu. Fu was stunned. She'd never thought a day like this would come. She stood perfectly still for a moment before her arms swiftly wrapped around his neck, tears, now of joy, rolling down her face. The pair melted into their embrace as they were consumed with a passion they'd never experienced before while, unknown to them, Jiraiya watched from a nearby building with a smile.